Stippity ba. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. It's Wednesday. Hello, would you like to join me for picks of the week? Ba-da, ba-da, ba-da. Sure you would. So you should be doing this. So I'm finally all caught up. Oh, it feels nice. There is one book left in my bag that I was a late addition today after I'd already gotten all my books for the week. Um, and none of them. So I by this past Monday I cleared my bag. I took Tuesday to read everything, so I have a ton to get to down here. So there's not a ton to get to here. And then I bought this week's today. It's just it feels nice, and it's not. I'm not broke, which is a very weird feeling. I mean, I'm not comfortable by any stretch. I'm not biting my nails down to the quick though. So for this week's picks of the week, I've got these issues of Slow Death. This is Slow Death number 2, number 5, number 8, number 9, and number 10. So 2, 5, 8 through 10. Did I even make a note of these in my log? I should check. Slow Death was an underground comic in the 70s, and it's of particular interest these days because it is all ecological horror stories. So I don't know if you know, but back in the hippie days, the hippies were the only ones who were like worried about climate change at the time. Look at this thing. Oh, okay, I didn't. I wrote down Slow Death on my list, but I didn't write the numbers that I have. So these were books that I had found whilst working. My main job there is to go through the one room full of backstock and check against what we have on the floor and then what we need. And he's got a good amount of underground. It's a little different from my previous shop where I worked, where we had pretty regimented sections for everything. At this shop, everything's just alphabetically A through Z, and it's a little. I mean, there's some like Amazing Spider-Man is under Spider-Man. A lot of shops have different alphabetizings and stuff, and he's got a fair amount of undergrounds out there already. I've run across a couple, at least one issue of Zap. I can't remember because a lot of undergrounds were just one-offs, you know. So Zap was a regular thing. Slow Death was a regular thing. But anyway, like I was saying, yeah, these are ecologically minded horror stories, and they goes back to the undergrounds. Can trace a lot of the best undergrounds, in my opinion. Can trace a lot of their heritage, I guess, from the EC comics of the 50s. So this cover is a tribute to a Wally Wood cover. I can't remember which. It's my wallpaper on my cell phone though. This is Two Fisted Tales number 17, or an homage to Two Fisted Tales number 17. And I think that's it out of these. And yeah, Jackson's art, and there's a bunch of different. William Stout did this cover. Bunch of really good underground artists, and it's been a while since I've read any underground stuff, so I'm definitely looking forward to reading these. And I had meant to get to these this Tuesday, but wouldn't you know it, I had to go host the open mic at the world famous Hollywood Improv, so I had to go do that instead. So now these are at the top of the stack because I have to do these for picks of the week. This is not a pick of the week, but this is just something very nice that I would like to share. So I was at the shop today working, and a fella came in this afternoon around lunchtime, and he had a bunch of Funko Pops he was looking to unload, which my boss was like, meh. And then a few oversized, like 12-inch X-Men action figures from, I want to say, the late 90s, which he did buy, and then a bunch of slabbed books. If you're not familiar with slabbing, this is a practice that's been, I guess it's for about 20 years now. You send your comics to a company, usually CGC, although I believe there's a few now. CGC, I think, was the first comics grading company, is what I think that actually stands for. And they grade it, they encase it in plastic, which you can open, but it's not. Once you do, it's no longer slabbed, and so it's very Schrodinger's cat. And then they send it back. It costs like $50, I want to say, per book. But if you have a very high, if you have a say a key book that's worth money, you can increase that value by getting it slabbed. And there's a lot of collectors that buy him slab. So he had a bunch in there, and some of them really nice. There was a special Marvel edition number 16, which is the second appearance of Shang-Chi, the Master of Kung Fu. Shang-Chi, pardon me. And some assorted X-Men. And so he had a copy of Uncanny X-Men number 251 in there, which is a book that I bought off the rack when I was 12. But then in high school, I went through my snooty, I'm not into superheroes phase anymore. And I sold a lot of those X-Men so I could buy copies of Cerebus and Hate. And I always regretted doing that, especially with 251, because it's one of my favorite covers. And Warren was nice enough to just give it to me. So here I have my first slab. I've never had a slabbed book before. The light is not such that you can. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's the special Easter issue. Wolverine being crucified by the Reavers out in their Australian outback, or the X-Men's Australian outback headquarters. Well, I guess which had been the Reavers headquarters until the X-Men took it over. So by Mark Silvestri. 9.0 is very high grade, although so the notes say there's off-white pages. And it does look like a 9.0, but it also looks like they might have slabbed it a little hastily and the cover's a little wonky in there. But needless to say, I was flattered. That was he was also like, it's not really worth that much. There was a time where it was hard to get, and you'd have to pay a lot. Nowadays, I think you get for like $8 or $9. But now I have it here. I don't have to get it. Suitable for framing. I was thinking of maybe trying to put it up here somewhere. Can you see it? Anyway, that's nice, isn't it? My boss is a very nice man. And he supplied that pick of the week. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. He also gave me these for pretty cheap, too. I think only like $5 a pop, which he usually charges at least 10. I mean, undergrounds aren't like... People aren't, scouring the earth for them. But they might be for picks of last week. But undergrounds are just kind of hard to come by in general because they had such a low print run. And some obviously are worth more than others. And there's a bunch of different printings, and it's usually hard to tell which is which, but it doesn't matter. So I got a ton of picks for this week because not only did I have the 3 from last week, but then I did end up buying a bunch of new series, which from over the last couple months. Some of them were stinky, but the ones I'm going to talk about are really good. Speaking of really good, first up, Human Target number 1. Oh my god. This is actually the first time to my recollection that the Human Target has been in the DC universe proper, and he's interacting with other superheroes in the DC universe. The Human Target's job in this story is to find out who's trying to kill Lex Luthor. So naturally, that's going to be difficult because Lex Luthor has quite a few enemies, as it turns out. The art is above reproach. The story is incredible. Christopher Chance finds himself at death's door as well, and so now he's trying to solve not only Lex Luthor's murder but his own. There's nothing more I can say. This is exactly what I wanted. Greg Smallwood is off his ass in this, and the story's really good, like I just said. What more can I say? Not a lot. I'm probably going to try to get through these pretty quick because I don't want to be here all night. I also read The Thing number 1, written by Walter Mosley. Again, great stuff. The art is really good too. I'm not familiar with Tom Riley off the top of my head anyway, but yeah, really, really good stuff. This also, I want to say this takes place before Ben and Alicia got married. I want to say it even says in the book where it takes place, but it's not like in current continuity, I don't believe, which makes sense. A new story from a classic era. So yeah, this is there's a shadowy evil figure, and then Ben gets the oh right. Yeah, this is when him and Alicia were still just dating. Ben ends up in the slammer, and he's just kind of on his own at this point. He's kind of alien. Oh my gosh, yeah, you got to see this. Yeah, this spread. He has a vision of the future where everyone has died. Yeah, it's really really good. I don't know what else to really say. Walter Mosley, you've done it again. If you've not read anything by Walter Mosley, I would highly recommend it. We went over that last week. What's the furthest place for your number one? This was really fun, and also I'd forgotten that they had made a teaser trailer for it on YouTube, and we watched it at the shop, and so I was kind of like, oh right, I do kind of know what's happening. It's a post-apocalyptic thing where only the teenagers are left alive, and they're very. It's like a gang thing. So like this is our heroes' spot, and everything revolves around records. They live in an old record store, and yeah, I only just noticed that this was an old record store, and they all listen to the same bands that I listen to, so it's great. It's also got a very Dead Enders feel, which I haven't read in a long time, but that was a Vertigo book from the early aughts by Ed Brubaker and Philip Bond. It was a very similar thing where it was a little more quadrophenia-y, where all the characters had scooters and stuff. But I was pretty sure it was in the not too distant future. But this has a similar vibe. So yeah, and then Rosenberg goes on at length at the end about the bands he likes and everything. And how I mean I'm a big music guy myself. I don't know if that's a surprise to anybody. And the thing about music though is when people start talking about it passionately, I even if it's bands that I like, I start to tune out. And there's always been a thing with comics, especially with indie comics, where they really try to combine the two. And I think this is the best because so far there's no bands playing in this. Whenever they try to depict music in a comic book, it never works. But whenever they try to depict characters who are super into music, it can work. It definitely works better, and that's what we have here. Also, for I want to say it was $4.99. It might have been $5.99. Big thick issue, really good read. Tyler Boss is a really good artist, and yeah, it was only $5. The standard cover price for comics has been $3.99 for a while, but in front of an inch up, and I'm pretty sure they're going to go to $4.99. And now, I mean, nowadays for any larger issue or any number one is going to be $4.99. It's just kind of standard. It's a drag, but what are you going to do? But in the meantime, you get a lot of story for $5 here. I also this week I read Friday Volume One. This is a book by Ed Brubaker and Marcos Martin, and it's it's a digital comic, and it's free. But they know that schnooks like me are gonna plunk down hard-earned money for it if you put it in a book form, because I would much rather read this than read it online. This is really fun. I mean, Brubaker we already know is great as far as crime goes, and this is very Encyclopedia Brown. He mentions some other similar YA stories from the 70s, but Encyclopedia Brown is the most obvious influence to me, where you have the detective characters Lance something or other, and then Friday Fitzhugh is his Mr. Watson, and the story is told from her point of view, and it's very much an Encyclopedia Brown story, but it's also like Ed Brubaker would do. They are slightly older, and they've graduated high school now, so things are starting to the real world is starting to horn in. It also reminds me a lot of the film Mystery Team. I don't know if you've ever seen that. That's a great movie. I want to say from like 07, 08, starring Donald Glover. I can't remember the other two guys. Donald Glover was in a bit of a troupe with two other guys, one of whom is a stand-up whose name is going to really bother me until I can remember it. I think they're all just actors now. I don't think any of them do stand-up anymore. But it was the same. It was the same deal. Mystery Team was about three boys who solved mysteries in their neighborhood, and then as they got older, they were like, "Oh no, the real world is encroaching," and that's what we have here, and it's really, really good. So this is a very coming of age story with a mystery wrapped in a mystery's wrapped in a mystery. You get it. Okay, what else do we got? I guess I'll just go. No, you know what? I'll start from the bottom. Yeah, I like that idea. Knighted #1. This is a book. Gosh, I meant to look that up. It's it's from AWA, and it actually takes place in a universe already. What is it though? Resistance. So AWA put out a book. I guess it was last year, or it might have been right before the lockdown, called The Resistance, and it was by J. Michael Straczynski and Mike Deodato Jr., and it was another sort of more realistic superhero story. I think if I remember right, there is a pandemic that gives some people superpowers, not everybody, but a lot of people. And so now they're just normal, I guess. I can't remember. I read the first volume and I remember enjoying it, but I can't remember it for the life of me. Knighted takes place in that, and in this we have this very Batman-like character, and our protagonist becomes him. So yeah, it's very similar to the boys had a similar sort of thing. So yeah, the main character is this real schlub, and he gets the shit beat out of him, and he ends up. I think he ends up accidentally. Yeah, that's right. He accidentally kills this superhero, this very Batman-like superhero, and so he becomes. It's like the Santa Claus. It's really, I mean, the main reason I bought Greg Hurwitz, who was a novelist, and I've read some of his work for Marvel. He wasn't the main reason I bought it, although his name on it didn't hurt. Mark Texeira's name is why I bought it. Mark Texeira has been drawing comics since at least the 80s. He drew Hex, which is one of my favorite bad comics from the 80s. He drew Ghost Rider, which I think is in the early 90s, which is how I knew who he was. And that stuff is unbelievably good. It was the art on Ghost Rider back then was between him and I want to say Javier Saltares, and they were both just incredible. It was such a good book back then. And so Tex shows up in stuff every now and again, but he hasn't. It seemed like in the '90s he was always working, and now it's just kind of. I would imagine like a lot of these guys, he's probably just illustration or something. But this is probably his best work that I've seen in a while, and he has done stuff recently. But yeah, I'm gonna keep buying that. The story is good. The story does make, but as soon as I opened it, I'm like, oh, I want to read the rest of this just for text. This was a fun one. So the Heathens #1. This is a kind of a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen type thing where you have these dead people who were bad people in life, and now they've been given a chance in the afterlife to make it right. So you have, I can't remember her name, but she's a Chinese pirate queen. I don't remember this lady's name either. But this is Billy the Kid. This is Lucky Luciano. This is Bumpy Johnson. And so it's that sort of a story. There was no, that was a different book. Never mind. It reminded me of another book that I read this week that I didn't like, so I'm not talking about it. But this was much better. And it's Cullen Bunn, who I have kind of made kind of damned with faint praise in this little thing, but this is really good. So I'm very happy to be reading this book, and it feels like an old Cullen Bunn book. This was regarding the matter of Oswald's body. Um, this is about a group of teenagers going to high school in the late '90s. No, it's all about the Kennedy assassination. But now I'm trying to remember what exactly. This was another one I bought. Christopher Cantwell is writing this, and I've been enjoying his work on Iron Man. But the art is by Luca Casalanguida, who drew Lost Soldiers last year, which I loved. This is another book though where it's like a ragtag bunch of took place in the early '60s. Right? Trying to remember what the yeah, this is it takes place days before the Kennedy assassination. And they are tasked with trying to kill Lee Harvey Oswald. So that should be interesting, shouldn't it? I do like JFK stuff, is especially around the assassination. It's been a while, like back in the '80s and '90s when it was everywhere. It got a little old, but I've done a lot of reading up on it, and know quite a bit about it. I was at Dealey Plaza. Gosh, that was 2 years ago. Yeah, September of 2019. First time I'd ever been there, and it was really it. For one thing, it looks a lot smaller than it does on television. But yeah, it's one of those things where I don't know how for everybody, but you don't really I don't know. I mean, I like I said, I'd read up on it and stuff, but actually seeing the whole thing is very weird, but cool, I guess. Cool is the word I want. This is the Rush #1, which is apparently an acrostic for "This hungry earth reddens under snow-clad hills." Whoa. This is by Cy Spurrier, who I've definitely mentioned on here before. I want to say he's a Scottish fellow. Oh, this is yeah, the Rush in this case is the Yukon Gold Rush, and this woman is trying to find her teenage son who is in the Yukon, and then has gone missing, and then scary stuff happens. But yeah, it's super good. This is really good. I hope I don't forget about. Vault has got. Oh, yeah, I'll get to that. But this is from Vault Comics, and they've been putting out some real crackers, and I'll talk about that in a minute. This one almost got right past me. This is from Image. It's called Newburn. It's written by Chips Darsky and drawn by Jacob Phillips, who's Sean Phillips' boy, draws That Texas Blood. This is incredible. So the titular character here is an ex-cop who is kind of he describes himself at one point as being like a UN official in that he's his thing is that he investigates mafia related crimes within so if there's inter mafia violence, the Sicilians versus the Russians, or within those mafias or the Yakuza or whoever, Newburn is kind of given a free pass, and he investigates what's going on, and just and you know some of the cops are like, yeah, okay, they know who he is, but all in the name of keeping the peace. And so, ugh, great stuff, right up my alley. I got a copy with some dings in the cover. I don't care for that at all. How much did I read this week? A lot. I got up at like 6:37 on Tuesday, and I just read until like 3:30 in the afternoon. Magic Order Volume 2, #1. This is great. I'd forgotten how much fun the previous series had been. The Magic Order is written by Mark Millar, and it's drawn by Stuart Immonen, who I'm pretty sure drew the first series as well. Immonen's one of my favorites. He did Next Wave for Marvel ages ago. And anything, I'll buy anything he does. But, and Mark Millar is kind of a divisive figure in comics because he's very much an opportunist. He was really at the fore of trying to get comics made in all of his comics made into movies or TV. Like he really wanted to make that connection. He really wanted comics to be a springboard into the bigger entertainment fields. And yeah, personally, I don't, and a lot of people are like, well, the hell with you then. We just want to read comics. We're not trying to sell out, man. But the poor son of a bitch, he's really not, it's weird because so many of his properties have been made into films or TV shows, and with the exception of Kick-Ass, which didn't do great for a sequel, even though he had done several series of those. None of them have really gone anywhere. He has a big, I'm sure, very lucrative deal with Netflix to develop programs for them, but Jupiter's Legacy already got canceled. There's Super Crooks is coming out pretty soon. I guess that's supposed to be animated. And the Magic Order was another one. This was, to my knowledge, the first comic that he put out with the Netflix logo on the back because they were going to make it, and I don't think they ever did. I think they might be doing it now, hence why there's a new series. But I really like it. It's got a very Strange Killings vibe, which is another Strange Killings. I think was the or is it Strange Kisses? I don't remember the character's name, but it was a Warren Ellis creation where he was a combat magician, black ops a lot of the time. And this is a similar sort of a thing. It's not as military, but it is. There is there are these magicians very powerful, and the reality is threatened. In the first series, um, yeah, they were being this family whose name I can't remember now, who have been like the main magicians for generations, was being kind of slowly picked off, and so they had to find out who their enemy was and then fight them. In this one, the enemy is very clearly, um, I want to say it's in Eastern Europe somewhere, but there's a few magicians there who are like, why are we living like this when we have these magic powers? So it's good magic versus bad magic. It's a lot of fun, and then Stuart Immonen's art is unbelievable. This is probably the best thing I've read all week. This is Barbaric #1. This is a fourth printing, so I'm not sure when this came out or when there will be even more. I should have asked him that while I was there today. It's written by Michael Moresi, who I've read stuff before. Drawn by Nathan Gooden, who I have not. It's very much a Conan sort of a book, but there's swearing and boobs, and a lot of both. And the art is unbelievable. Look at that. Hellish 2-page spread. Ugh. Yeah, just really fun stuff. Very much. I wrote to Vault Comics, and I was like, don't ever stop doing this. So our main character, whose name eludes me, but he was a real savage barbarian, and then he was cursed by a gypsy to where he could only kill evildoers, and he hates it because he himself is an evildoer, but he has to and he has to do it. If he sees something or knows of capital crime happening, he has to act on it, and it's so fun. And his axe talks to him, and he gets drunk on blood. It's so good. I really am very excited for this series. I hope there are more forthcoming. I'm gonna have to remember to ask him because I'm probably going to forget. Anyway, that was picks of last week. All right, I'm gonna go now so I can make a note to ask him to do that. Thank you. Goodbye.